Hello, welcome to another episode of Scuttlebutt. I'm Nick. I'm here with Vic.
Hey.
I'm here with William.
Howdy.
I'm here with our special guest today, Chief Warrant Officer 4, Denise Barnes.
Hey.
We're going to applaud. And we're also going to give you applaud for your recent retirement from the Marine Corps.
Congratulations.
Or should we?
Thank you so
Congratulations
much.
on retirement, but we're sad you're out, I think, right? Like.
Oh, yeah. No, it's definitely
about-
a hit to the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
But, we can't all play and have fun forever, right?
Whichever emotion we want to feel right now.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
All right, so. Sorry, we just had a visitor from outside. All right, so Vic, I don't know if you want to take this away right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so as we stated, we're here with Chief Warrant Officer 4, recently retired, Denise Barnes. Thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you.
So we had a really great sort of pre-show introduction, and so I apologize for making you rehash some of the stuff you already talked about. But your journey to the Marine Corps, before we even get into the absolute unique and amazing things you've did in your career, can we talk a little bit about how it was that you came to be in uniform? Because I think it's a very unique journey as well.
Thanks again for having me today.
Oh, yeah.
So I was born in Trinidad and Tobago. I always say and Tobago because there's a Trinidad in Colorado and people get confused.
That's right.
So in the Caribbean, that Trinidad,
Yeah.
right? So Mom had me young at 17. And when I was 2 years old, she came to America to, work, establish a career, and make it easy to pave the way for me to migrate as well and eventually earn American citizenship. So the big focus was on education. So once my mom got situated, I wasn't allowed to come to America right away because the schooling in Trinidad is a little bit more technical, a little bit more advanced. So I was required to finish school first. So I was proud. I went to the only all-girls college in the Caribbean, St. Francois Girls College. And at 17, in 1989, I migrated to America. So just, working odd little jobs here and there. Had to do 2 years of high school. But eventually I moved on and did 2 years of college at Montclair State University. But then, because of some health issues with Mom, I took a quick little break. But then I wanted to go back to college, wanted to finish, and I wanted to establish a career. So I ran into someone that I ran track with in high school and college, and he became a Marine, and he just told me about the college, the free medical and dental care and paycheck twice a month. And I'm like, all right, where do I go? Sign me up, right? So that was it. So in March of 96, I made that decision to join the Marine Corps. My only regret is that I didn't do that sooner. So at 24, decided to wear the cloth.
So, and where did you first enter in? Were you in? Because you said you went to Montclair in Jersey. So were you in New York, New Jersey area at the time before you joined?
Oh, I was in New Jersey. So I joined
okay.
from New Jersey. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how was that transition being 17? Like you were saying, the schooling's a little bit more advanced, a little more regimented. You get 2 years of high school, which had to feel like almost a step back at that point, right? Because, you're already done. You'd already passed all of your college entrance exams in Trinidad and Tobago. So now you're going back to high school in New Jersey. What was that like?
At times it was cool, because the environment is different, but at the same time, you're hearing, where are you from? What country? That's not a country. Like, you got an accent. Like, we don't know what you're saying, right? So you dealt with that, but I was good at gaffing people off. So,
And what's funny is, too, like, if you're in New Jersey, you can't understand anything they say either, right?
Right, yeah. Let's talk about a language barrier.
I can't even understand what half the time people say from Jersey.
Which we love everybody, all of our listeners from New Jersey. We absolutely love you. It's just
We just can't understand you.
Yeah, but overall, it was a great experience. I just said to myself, this is a requirement. Can't go crazy with it. Just do it.
Yeah. Very cool. And so can you talk a little bit about your time in boot camp then? Because I think your outlook on boot camp is very unique.
Or even of America. You go straight, and then you go to American high school, and then you go to like a part American college, and then like the Marine Corps, which is an entirely different subculture within the
tons
United
of different-
States.
Yeah. So the thing is, growing up in Trinidad, we don't focus on ourselves. We don't. It's not all about me, right? So we work hard. Nothing is given to us. We don't expect that. We help the less fortunate. We're very courteous and we're warm, and it's that brother and sister relationship, and we're big on family. So that prepared me for the way of life in the Marine Corps, right? And with us, we just serve with so much pride. People from the islands just serve with so much pride. So going to boot camp, I enjoyed it. I liked it because, I wanted to showcase, my talents and how proud I was to have that opportunity to serve, to establish a career and do well. So for me, it was just learning as much as I can, and it was great because I ended up having such a great rapport with two of our drill instructors, and to today, we still are very much in touch. My daughter has gifts from them still that they made by hand. So it was very rewarding. And again, the only regret I have is that I didn't do that sooner. But
And then what was for all of our younger listeners then, like having more of that life experience, and you said you ran track in college.
right.
So as far as like preparation is concerned, I would imagine that you probably felt pretty ready to go. Like you didn't, like you mentioned in the pre-show, like it wasn't a lot of, you didn't have to, like think about it. Like, hey, I need you're ready to do this thing, and then sort of being a little longer in the tooth then amongst kids who are 18, 19 years old. What was that experience like for you?
It was great. I mean, my recruiter was great. We PT'd. He explained a lot of things, exactly how boot camp would be. He said, look, it's 3 months, the yelling and all that crazy stuff. Just ignore it. Just do good. I know you'll do good. And he just prepared me for that stuff. So at 24, and even now, I'll be 51 this year, and I don't do the age thing. Well, I'm getting old. No. Age is just a number,
That's
because coming up through the Marine Corps, my view was if I joined at 24 and I chose to stay, I have to exceed Marine Corps requirements. I don't like meeting requirements. I like to exceed them. So for me, even in my mid-40s, my goal was I'm going to beat one male Marine on that PFT and CFT, right? But so I just always serving with pride and wanting to do good,
That's so cool. Yeah, and I think that there's an immigrant story there for sure. I think we talked a little bit too. Having come from a refugee family, there is this sense of like I got to give back, and then I'm also in a way, as unfair or unfair, like I am also representing,
yes.
in a certain degree as well. Like there is a little bit more of a microscope there, or at least you feel that inside. So there's that drive. And so, like you were saying then, so when you came in, it was just all about being a Marine. You just wanted to wear the uniform. How did you end up then in working with
Corrections.
the correction facilities, or the confinement facilities, the Brigs, basically?
Yeah.
Well, when I joined, I didn't ask the recruiter for a specific MOS. I just felt whatever job I was assigned that I would work hard and make sure I did my part every day. So then they told me, hey, you got the corrections MOS. And I'm like, great, because for a very short time in New Jersey, I worked at the Esmore Detention Center. So we would pick up illegal immigrants from the airport and house them until they had hearings, and then were typically returned. The amount that were allowed to stay in America was extremely small. So so with that experience, maybe they saw that and chose to give me corrections, but I certainly enjoy the field. And it's very rewarding, because when you look at it, the job is challenging. Sometimes.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine.
Yeah, you got some prisoners that get it. Hey, I messed up. Let me just do what I got to do and go home. And then you got the other ones who want a lot of attention. They'll lash out and do things, even though it negatively affects them. So, so I just told the recruiter to sign me up for whatever, and got corrections. So.
And then I guess fast forwarding, then you were one of two Chief Warrant Officer 4s in the confinement facilities, MOS, correct?
Right. So in the
I think there's one more like female, right? Like we got
That's what I'm saying.
one
One
more
of
female.
two.
Yeah.
One of two. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
you didn't. I don't think you said.
Oh, did I say?
Yeah. I'm
no,
like, I'm
one
sure
of
there's
two.
a lot of CWO4s
Not only
running
two
around,
Chief
but,
Warrant
like,
Officer
yeah.
fours, there are two female Chief Warrant Officer
Yeah,
fours.
but-
Yeah, there's plenty,
Yeah.
plenty of Chief Warrant Officer
Yeah.
fours.
yeah. So females, just for a very quick brief on females. Females did not come into the corrections world until the mid to late 80s, right? So it started with them bringing over female MPs to the correction side. So my retiring official, who I just love to death, Miss Kate Toscano, Chief Warrant Officer 3, United States Marine Corps, retired. She was the first female Brig CO we ever had, and she was the first, one of the first female that came into the field. So, and I believe she was the senior one that retired as a Chief Warrant Officer 3, but she did 20 years of service, so there's no doubt she would have probably been the first one. So Karen DeMora, another Marine I just love, she's currently the CO at the Brig in Camp Pendleton. We both got selected in 2019, and that was the first time in the history of the Marine Corps' corrections field that females attained the rank of Chief Warrant Officer 4. So I hope we're not the last.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a great feeling. We just worked hard, and we just stayed the course, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to echo some of the sentiments of the Commandant and ACMAC, I mean, it's like, based off of your guys' performance, I mean, we're in the business of needing talent. Right. Talent management is a major thing. And so, yeah, I don't only hope that there are more in the future, but I think that's a call to action. Yes. That we need talented people to be in places where they can thrive. And I think that's it, like, period. You don't have to quantify that any further, right?
Right. I tell you, it's, you know, and I tell Marines, I said, there are no shortcuts, right? A lot of people looked for them before and couldn't find any. Mm-hmm. You just have to work hard. You know you got to exceed standards, and your character, your decision-making, your judgment, those things are vital, especially when you have high-profile prisoners in a facility or other things are going on and you have to make decisions or recommend things to your chain on the installation. So those things are very important.
We will definitely. I want to definitely touch on some of these high-profile cases that you just alluded to, but I do want to also. I don't want to be obtuse to the realities, though. Being one of a very select few Marines in this MOS, female Marines in this MOS. What was that like? Was it as awesome as we like to think? Like, hey, we're all Marines, we're all wearing uniforms, or were there some challenges coming up through the ranks?
I mean, at times, you know, there were challenges, but the corrections field as a whole is one of the smallest MOS in the Marine Corps. So we, you know, typically there's good rapport. But I'll give you a quick example, right? So I'm checking into the Brig at Camp Lejeune, and 99, I'm a little corporal, you know, and so I check in. The gunnery sergeant, when I said, good morning, gunnery sergeant, I'm, you know, Corporal Barnes, I'm checking in. His first question was, can you PT? I didn't get asked how I'm doing, how my trip was, do I have dependents, am I getting situated, what do I need from him? And I looked at him. I was very respectful because at 24 years old, either 27, I should say, it's you just bite your tongue. And I said, yes, gunnery sergeant, and then I told him what my PFT score was, which I later learned that it was way higher than his.
Yeah, I'm about to say.
Yeah, so, you know, and then sometimes, like fast forward several years, so I was a CO at Lejeune, at that Brig, and so the Marine on the quarterdeck signing in visitors called me because somebody had a question, right? So I come up to the quarterdeck. It was a major, I think. So I came up. I was very polite, introduced myself. I said, hey, good afternoon. I'm Chief Warrant Officer Barnes. I'm the CEO. What can I help you with today? And he stopped, like he stared. Then he leaned to the right and looked around me. Then he turned around and looked behind him. And I'm like, so I leaned in that direction, right? And I said, yes, I'm the CEO. What can I do for you today? So it was just so uncommon that you
Right.
typically don't see female Brig CEOs, right? And I think, honestly, that's just what it was. So when you have that expectation, somebody calls for the CEO, you expect to see a male Marine. So Karen and I kind of shattered that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But in general, I've had support, right, from senior enlisted officers in the field. And for somebody like Kate, who retired me on Friday, like I told the Marines during my ceremony, I said, when we talk about mentorship, that is something we're very serious about. So what you're seeing today is mentorship from 1999, from me being a corporal all the way to Chief Warrant Officer 4. She retired 20 years ago. So I tell people, I said, when we say Semper Fidelis, we mean it.
Right, right.
I can always talk to her about anything, any topic. And of course, she was concerned, well, you are a senior to me. Am I allowed to retire you? And I said, yes, you are. You know, because in General Dunford's case, his brother retired him. So, and it was great. So that was the biggest thing for me, you know, it's just taking in all the support when I got it. And when I didn't get it, I just gaffed it off. And I just used that as fuel to drive me even harder.
Yeah. It was so cool.
Did you find that, I was just kind of just jumping in the correctional a bit about this, was there like layers to you kind of getting, I don't know, flack from outside? So like first you were like, oh, everyone in the correctional is okay, but then there's people on the outside, yeah, but that's a tiny MOS. Like, of course they could move women up through there. Like, was there any of that? Or was
You
that
mean like
just
institutionally?
yeah, like
then?
institutionally, like infantry guys or something, like not giving you the respect you deserved or something?
No, I think in general, people don't understand the full scope of corrections, right?
Yeah.
So for the infantry guys who deployed and had corrections with them in Iraq or Afghanistan, for them it's like, oh, y'all do like other stuff because we typically don't deploy frequently. So, you know, they just don't have the full understanding. So in the other sense, if a unit confines somebody, by the time we explain all the rules, all their requirements, it's like, whoa, this is a lot.
Yeah.
They got to come visit every week. If the prisoners want to go to the bank 5 times a week, guess what? The unit got to take care of that stuff. So I just think in general, there's not a full understanding of the corrections field. And then even on the civilian side, you know, you have prisoner supporters or their attorneys just saying whatever. So they always feel like we don't do things right. Like, oh, we're abusing them or we're punishing them. And they don't even know the rules. They don't know the facts. And of course, we can't, you know, say anything and tell them what the truth is. So, so in general, you know, you get a mixture of that MOS. Oh, okay, I guess they just lock people up and not understand the full breadth of it, because for post-trial prisoners, we have to help prepare a program plan for them to follow to enable them to have a smooth transition and hopefully not, you know, not repeat their mistakes. So the recidivism rate is something we work to try to lower if we can, right? So it's not so much, oh, just throw them in the Brig, we'll come get them upon release. No, no.
Yeah.
It's a team effort. It's the Brig staff, it's the unit, it's the chaplain, it's the social worker. So it's everybody working together.
So it is still Semper Fidelis, even when a Marine is broken from maybe the, you know, the tenets of what that means. Everybody else is still upholding it. We're always faithful.
Yeah. We take care of them, even regardless of what the crime is.
No matter how big of a pain in the ass that might be, right?
Yeah.
So let's just talk a little bit about it. You know, having been, you know, an Amtracker with deployments, I still knew very little about the Brig, other than I got a guy who needs to go, and then pass him off to battalion, and the battalion coordinates everything. And like you said, you do your regular visits or whatever. But, I mean, I think even through most of my career, I thought that was just a facet of PMO. I didn't even think I realized until I was like a captain or a major that it's its own MOS. Right. So can we talk a little bit about what it is that you guys do? And you talked about going on deployments. Would you guys deal with enemy, prisoners that they would take in, that they would detain, or was it only Marines that you guys deal with?
No, so on these deployments, we had back then, because I was fortunate enough to get one deployment in 2009. I deployed with 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines. They told me it's America's battalion. That's what they said.
There you go.
But so, and my job then was the detentions evaluation and assessment officer and program officer in charge, right? So we had two things. I would oversee the treatment and the management of the detainees in the facilities that they had, but I would also travel and look at the detainee collection points, right?
Okay.
So we had to make sure, did they have rugs to pray? Did they have the Quran? Are they being treated well? And things like that. So for us, you may not find us out in the front engaging in live fire with the infantrymen side by side unless some exception was made. But typically, it'll be going out, collecting detainees, making assessments. So there were occasions where I would, I would go on a convoy just to see how the detainees were treated when they had to take them from, the Brig, the detention facility, back to some place upon release. So the handoff, all these things are so important. So of course it's, tensions are a little high, and you want to make sure, hey, we get this handoff done properly and we get back. So typically, we just were big on making sure that those detainees were treated well and they got to where they needed to be.
Yeah, I think I would definitely want to drill down on this, because it's not just like, hey, tuck and roll out of the back of an MRAP once you get released, right? Like there is a very deliberate and intentional process to things, and we see what happens. I was in Afghanistan with RCT-5 when I won it. Then I've got a horrible memory, but I don't think it was Dwyer's, but it was one of the camps where the DETFAC was basically cleaning stuff out and getting rid of some of the, bringing in new things, new prayer rugs, new Qurans, and then they just weren't paying attention to what they were disposing of, and they put a bunch of Qurans in the burn pit. And of course, the local workers saw that happening, and things went absolutely as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And so this is that sort of thing where it's like this extremely deliberate, detailed process that a lot of people just aren't paying attention to.
Yeah, and that's so important. And one of the things we reinforced, especially when we got into country, was, hey, the cultural classes we got prior to deployment, you got to abide by those. So, for example, with the cultural differences with females being in a position of power over detainees. So we didn't allow females to guard the detainees with their weapons, like pointing down at them while they were seated or something like that. So it's little things like that that you're cognizant of, and you make the adjustments. You don't sacrifice the mission, but you make, you try your best to do the mission well and not cause that uproar.
Yeah.
So reinforcing, like you said, the prayer rugs, the Quran. These are just things you don't just throw away or just toss to the side or not, treat it in a similar manner that they do.
And it's a force multiplier. I mean, we had at one point so many detainees going in and into the DEFAC, just for the nature of where we are and the nature of the tactile environment. Yeah, we had a lot of people going away, and even at one point when we were doing the handover, they were like, where are you guys exactly? Like, why are we seeing you guys so much? But I will tell you, when we would get folks back, the way that they were treated would literally change the topography of what was going on, because it was this, it was very easy for Al-Qaeda to tap into this narrative that we were crusaders, that we hated, we're Islamophobic, that we're here to occupy the country because we want to make it a Christian country. You know, all of these
Right.
narratives that were being used against us. And so when you would actually get these detainees that would come back and say, like, yeah, that wasn't awesome, but they treated me great.
Yeah.
It changed the narrative big time.
Oh, yeah. And that's something Marine Corps Corrections is absolutely proud of. And that's something we will always hold our heads up high about. We never had an Abu Ghraib situation.
Right.
You never heard of Marine Corps Corrections doing that stuff because for us, I'll be honest, even in garrison, we know, just like prisoners, we're subject to the UCMJ, right? And I've seen it in my career where we had staff members locked up. Now, in the Marine Corps, we'll lock you up in the same brig where you work. Yeah. So the Navy do it a little different, but no, we don't tuck you away in another facility or anything. No, you will get locked up in the same
You
facility
just
where
get
you work.
a different parking spot.
Yeah. But the thing is, so I tell people that's a good thing because when prisoners see that staff members are locked up, it reinforces when people like me, SEALs like me, tell them staff and prisoners get held accountable here.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is brushed under the rug, right? So I remember going to, so after boot camp and MOS school, we had a blast in San Antonio, Texas, right? So we all get to Quantico because they told us, hey, about 9 or 10 of the staff members pop positive for drugs. They will get separated. So unless you're the honor grad, you're going to Quantico. You have no choice, right? So we get to Quantico, and it was great for me. I'm close to home, right?
Yeah.
So a guy that we went to MOS school with that was fun, he decided he was going to make prisoners do inverted push-ups. A prisoner slipped and broke his collarbone. He didn't die or anything, but the point is that we watched him go from brand new staff member, not even 2 years, to being a prisoner in that brig. He had a summary court martial and was given 30 days, and he got out. When I was a CO in Lejeune, we had a staff member that was abusing his wife, not taking care of things at home, and abusing his kids. He was confined. So at the end of the day, it's just really important that people see prisoners too, that everybody gets held accountable.
Yeah.
You know, so again, I'm just super proud that we've always had that reputation. We might be firm, we might toe that line, we might just, hey, discipline, structure, this is how we do it the right way, and not have an Abu Ghraib or a bunch of escapes and or
Right.
suicides on the watch, right? And I remember as a young Marine in Quantico, my first duty station, prisoners used to get an ironing board and iron to iron their prisoner uniforms because every Friday they would get inspected, haircut, shave, hygiene, the cell, everything. And that is an inspection they get every Friday. The pride I saw in those prisoners' faces, it just reinforced, you know what, I love what I do and we're doing the right thing because they realize you don't get to wear the camis anymore.
Right.
So the prisoner uniform is all they have, and they still took pride in that. And I mean, you would look at the seam, like the crease in the sleeve, and it could cut somebody. They just took that much pride, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, we did away with the ironing board and all that stuff, but again, just seeing the prisoners take the pride in rolling the sleeves are like dead on, like perfect.
Right.
It, just kind of shows, kind of doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Were those sleeves matching up with when they tell the Marine Corps sends out the message to roll up and roll down? Was that behind bars too?
Yeah. So then they also had short sleeve tops. Yeah. So and then wintertime they were issued coats as well. So we made sure we took care of them.
And then how about officer confinement? Are they within the general populace? Is that even the right term, general populace, or do they have their own sort of wing area?
No. So by the second have instruction that we follow, prisoners are evaluated when they come in. So there's nothing that says, an officer has to be absolutely by himself and away from everybody else. They'll go to general population, right?
Okay.
So again, if they don't have a history of assaults or anything, because there's a lot of criteria we look at: prior assaults, the seriousness of the alleged charges. We look at all those things. So when there's, because initially when everybody gets confined, they'll go into restrictive housing and, you know, get indoctrination classes. So they know all the rules. They'll get classes on everything, right? And then they take a test, they pass it, then we put them in general population unless there are factors that require them to stay in restricted housing. So with officers, I've seen officers in general population and
Yeah.
they're treated the same.
So one of those criteria isn't rank.
Right.
Yeah.
And the unique thing is whenever an officer is getting confined, typically the Brig CO goes in and we don't get in the middle of the receiving and release process where they're strip searched like everybody else, where their items are inventoried and the stuff they're not allowed to have is returned to the unit. But typically, in the very beginning, before anything starts, the Brig CO will go in and have a little chat with them and introduce themselves and say, hey, look, you're not an officer in here. You're in pretrial status. You don't rate a salute. Nobody will call you sir. And you don't direct any actions on staff or prisoners while you're confined, period. There are no exceptions. So they learn early in the game that before getting confined, you did whatever. But while in confinement, it's no sir or he's an officer or she's an officer. Nope. So, and then at the end of the receiving and the receiving process, before they get sent to the back to the housing unit, we come back in and ask, did you have any issues? Are there any concerns that you have? Typically, they'll say no, and we'll say, all right, receiving and release, you got them, and that's it. So it's just so important that up front, the rules are explained to them, so they know what to expect.
Yeah. And then is that work as the same for pretrial confinement, knowing that during their confinement time, obviously once it goes to trial, they could be acquitted. And then, so is there any nuances there for someone that may not actually be coming back?
No, and we don't know that,
Okay.
right? So that's just the standard. Upon confinement, you will be respectful. You will follow orders. And I typically do a quick in-brief with the prisoners when I see them. So it may not be in the receiving process, but when I make the rounds, I'll talk to them and explain those things. So whether they're pre-trial, post-trial,
Okay.
doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, I guess I was going to move on to some of the high-profile stuff since we're talking corrections. Did you guys have anything?
No, I want to go to the whole
Okay, yeah,
high
let's do-
profile
I do
stuff.
have one
Okay.
last.
Yeah,
I don't
please.
know. It could dip in the high profile. I don't know. But like
Alright.
over your long service time in the correction facility, how much does the outside world kind of infiltrate it? Like, does new commandant, new Secretary of the Navy, new Congress, new president, anything like that ever come in and like change the rules
Or
on
new
you?
base CO
New
even?
base CO, yeah, like
No, so typically we're so far down the chain and we're just not at a level where it requires so much. And again, it just goes back to we just do the basics and we do it well, right? So the Brig CO is appointed in writing by the installation commander or their designee. And typically you'll fall under that H&S battalion or security battalion. But we really don't have a ton of interference. So let me try to think of the last issue that I took a call from the commandant's office a while back. It was just asking about, I think it was probably the conditions in confinement, because somebody had got confined. I can't remember the exact story, but it was just him needing basic questions answered, right? Because they don't know, hey, what happens when you have a ton of, you're at capacity, or what happens when you have a prisoner with this. It was a high profile, and I'm sorry, I can't remember, but yeah, at about 1800, almost 1800, one night, got a call. Hey, CMC has some questions for you. Can you just answer them? And it was easy. So at the end of the day, we typically don't get a ton of interference, unless it's some high profile thing or something playing out in the news. So we work with Headquarters Marine Corps with the Judge Advocate Division, and so sometimes we'll give them a heads up if we're made aware of something being in the news. We touch base with them and Comstrat just to make sure, hey, I don't know if you guys are tracking this, but this is what we're hearing. Are you familiar with that? Sometimes it'll be, yep, we got word, or no, we didn't know. Thanks for letting us know, and we'll come back with questions for you. But typically, it's not a lot of interference, though.
Well, let's talk about one of those. PFC Manning. For our listeners who may not be aware, PFC Manning dumped thousands of classified files to, was it Assange?
Julian
WikiLeaks.
Assange,
WikiLeaks.
Which kicked off a lot of, obviously, churn in the news cycle. And he ended up under your charge. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I was the second CO there, while he was in confinement. So, and I really didn't have him for too long. I believe it was 4 months before he was transferred by the Army. So with high-profile prisoners, we treat them the same. We again, like I mentioned before, we're subject to the UCMJ, right? So we're going to do it right. And then not only that, the prisoners communicate with family, with friends. So obviously they'll say, hey, this is going on, that's going on. And sometimes it's not always true, but that's par for the course, right? But with high-profile prisoners, the focus is doing things right. Now, sometimes we make little exceptions, and I'll give you the one thing we did specifically to his case. Typically, when prisoners come in, we'll do a scars and marks when they are stripped down to identify, bruises, injuries, whatever. We typically don't do that when they're released. But because of things that were being said that we know weren't true, and because of mannerisms and different things we observed, we did his scars and marks when he left. So whether it's him possibly manipulating the handcuffs to bruise himself or just whatever, we just wanted to make it very clear that he came in and he left without a scratch on his body.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in general, we just follow the rules and we're consistent, and those are the things that that help, because people like me get called in to testify, as I did, and the staff as well. So because the trial took so long, we had all the staff, Air Force, Navy, Marines, come back to Maryland to testify. So it was a great reunion to see the staff because we had a great rapport, but not under those circumstances. So for me, some of the other things I reinforce is don't tune into the news all the time. Just try to ignore it, because they're getting information either from family members, friends, the attorneys, whatever.
Right.
And it's not always true. And we cannot speak out to detail things. And I'll give you a perfect example. Prisoners get the same Marine Corps birthday meal. They get the same Thanksgiving meal, Christmas meal that we get as staff. They eat the same food we eat, right, from the chow hall. So people don't understand that. And in his case, it came up, and people were like, wait a minute, he had steak and lobster? Yeah. So it's just things like that they don't know about, and they just assume, oh, you don't treat them well. So with the staff, I keep it normal. I tell them, I'm going to, I love you. I'm going to spoil you. And I bake. We have little barbecues at work. We do the normal things we do. I told them we're not going to stop. He's not going to be here forever. The protests and all these things, because the first one was on base, I told him, I said, you have to tune that stuff out and just continue to be the professionals that I love coming to work with every day. And so for me, it was always important to encourage them and motivate them. And then when the base commander or my boss would give compliments, I would quickly relay that to them. It could be 8 o'clock at night. I get it at 8 o'clock at night. Guess what? They're going to get told that, right?
Yeah.
So it's just real important that you keep the staff motivated and just focused on what we have to do and tune out the noise.
Mm-hmm.
In the papers, I noticed after the trial, like they drew very ugly pictures of
there's
us.
a lot of
and
hit pieces on there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I saw a couple of those.
Oh, yeah. It's funny, right?
Yeah.
So we just tune it out. And I tell them, I said, we're still going to be the best, period.
Yeah, regarding the Chelsea Manning case, you said there was protests like on base or in front of base, or?
Right. So the first one happened before I took over, but I was told they came in through Quantico Town, and that's the issue. People get coming off the train, and
Right.
So that was addressed and taken care of. And then the second one, it was at the front gate. And then, of course, the base commander at the time just said, hey, I don't want to see uniforms on the front gate. And they reinforced the lines and where people can protest and things like that. So, and that's why it's so valuable having the support of the military police as well, because at times during visits for Manning, um, I got the help of the MPs, right? So somebody can get on base, they have proof saying, hey, they're proof for visits, this and that. But at the end of the day, keeping my staff safe and the prisoners safe is just such a priority. So it's like I said, it was just one of those situations where it can drain you really quickly. But I
Mhm.
tell Marines, I said, we're gonna do what we normally do. We work hard, we play hard. You know, I'm gonna bake things and cook for you. It ain't gonna stop, right? But I also told them, hey, look, be cognizant, right? So when you're going home, switch the routes that I tell them to do the same things I did.
Yeah, make yourself a
Yeah.
hard target.
That's
right.
right. So modify the routes that you take to go home. Pay more attention. Because honestly, we got calls. We were bombarded with calls. They would call every line in the brig all day long. It got so bad that we got approval from the GS-15 on base and COM to record every line in the facility except for the one they speak to the attorneys on, because obviously those can't be recorded, right?
Mhm.
So when you get that approval and you record every phone call for every line in the brig but one, it's a huge task. So I'll give you an example of a voicemail message I got. Hey Barnes, what we need to do to get you to release Bradley Manning? Do we need to come to your house? Because we could arrange that.
Dang.
Oh man.
And I'm like,
Oh.
do they know they're calling a government phone on a military installation? Maybe not. So they would call, they would curse, they would say demeaning things. And I would tell the Marines, always be professional. Tell them you're going to hang up the phone if they're not calling with a specific request. And then even with some of those requests, we cannot answer it. We protect the prisoner's rights every day. It was so bad that an NCIS agent was assigned to me, and she had to come every Friday to get those recordings or anything that happened out of the ordinary, phone calls or voicemails, and she would copy those. And but yeah, we reported all threats. You know, they would say things like, "We know you guys tour around the building at night," and we do. We have
Sure.
tours going on. Obviously, we check the fence. You know, are there issues with it or anything that can allow for an escape or for somebody to come in? So dealing with high profile prisoners, it can drain you, but the rapport you have with the staff though, you is so important. And that's just something I took pride in my entire time, is letting Marines know I support you. Hey, we do it together, and I was in your shoes, so I know how it is.
Yeah, that's crazy. What about any other high-profile cases? I know we focused a little bit on the Manning issue, but anything else you could think of?
Yeah, so the one of the drill instructors who was found guilty of abusing some recruits, specifically the Muslim recruits, a few years ago, he was locked up in Lejeune, and you know he got 10 years. You know he has a family, and it's so unfortunate because I think sometimes people don't realize other people hurt too.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, so
That's a
yep,
good point.
he was one that we got, and it's amazing because you hear about the stuff they were found guilty of, what they were doing, putting recruits in the dryer, doing it, and yelling and this and that, and you get them in the brig, and I'm just doing my simple in brief, and his eyes are tearing up. Aye, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I'm like, it's a different environment. So we don't abuse prisoners, but at the end of the day, you realize, you ask yourself, was it
Yeah.
worth it,
Yeah.
right? So we got him. We also had the colonel with 36 years in the Marine Corps who got found guilty of multiple counts of conduct unbecoming, unauthorized absence, and abuse of a child. But that charge, abuse of a child, even though he found guilty and the convening authority approved that sentence, the Navy and Marine Corps Criminal Court of Appeal had issue with the abuse of a child. So that was pretty much overturned. So he got released from the brig pretty quick. He did not serve his 66 months, and he does not have to register as a sex offender. So I'm just giving the facts. But
Yeah.
So, and again, I tell the Marines, he's not going to be treated any different, right? He's not going to be referred to as Colonel anything. It is going to be prisoner so and so,
Right.
right? So, um, that case was just when you've been in for 36 years, you know a lot of people. A lot of people talk,
Yeah.
and it's really unfortunate. But again, in his defense, and to set the record straight, that charge involving the child, they felt that there was not enough evidence to convict him on it.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then, so with your experience, so I know that you have obviously a lot of control, and it sounds like a lot of positive team atmosphere with your staff. If you rewind your life and the time that you had worked at the dealing with the confinement of immigrants as they were being processed either in or out, how different is working with the prisoners between the civilian side and the military side? So, you've got a lot of oversight of your staff. Obviously, you can affect control there. What's it like then dealing with the general population?
So with prisoners, I aim to have a good rapport with them, and that doesn't mean that I'm friends with them. It simply means that there's a very clear expectation, right? So typically, when I take over as the Brig commanding officer, I will have them in formation. I'll introduce myself and tell them what my expectations are, that they'll follow orders immediately when they're given. I will forward charges to their command when it's warranted. If they're not following instructions and being a problem for us, I let them know they have my support. I don't brush things under the rug, whether it's for them or staff, that type of thing. But I also tell them what my expectations are for them, right? So that's real important to me to set that in the beginning stages. And then typically, prisoners have nothing but time, so they watch everything you do. So my battle rhythm every day was I'll come in, check my emails, nothing hot. Okay, I'll go and talk to all the staff first, see how they're doing, and then I'll go in the housing units and speak to the prisoners. And that was pretty much a daily thing. Just go in front of the cell. Hey, good morning. How are you? Any questions or concerns for me? Everything good. Now, if they told me about something that happened, I always follow up, right? So they don't come directly to me for requests, of course, but if they tell me, ma'am, I'm going to put in a request for this, maybe it's extended visitation because they only get weekends and holidays for 2 hours each day. But if they want a special visit, maybe in the week. I had one that wanted to celebrate his 5th wedding anniversary. So he asked, can his wife come on Thursday and not the weekend because that was the day they got married or whatever. And I told him, he said, I'll put in the request. I said, okay. I said, but if the staff tells me that we can accommodate it that day and nothing else is going on, that's not a problem. But of course, he was a prisoner that behaved well, So you can't look at, well, he did this, so I'm not. No, you give back to the prisoners. They have to see that when they behave themselves and they're respectful, that we give something back, right? So and again, I would walk around to each cell. I'll go out on the rec compound, and I think one thing the prisoners realize is that they can't pin down when I come to work. Staff couldn't do it either. They can't say, "Oh, she comes in every day like 7:45." Nope. I would come in late in the morning, super early in the morning. I would just come in at night on the weekends, and it's bad when the prisoners say, "Ma'am, it's Saturday, right?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are you questioning me?
Yeah.
So I always strive to have that report. And if it's issues with their unit, for example, and they want to request masks on the unit and file complaints, I make sure that the staff helps them with that stuff. So I'll give you just one quick example. A prisoner was told, hey, you need to fast because medical got stuff to do the next day. So at 1800, he didn't eat anything until the next morning. There was some mix-up, right? So he get to medical, and then they said, oh, no, they're not going to do the lab work. So they get hot breakfast every day. And so he had already passed that time. But we still keep things like fruit and cereal that they can have, right, in case anything's going on. So when I was briefed on it, I immediately went to the housing unit. And I spoke to the prisoner. I said, hey, I was briefed on what happened today. I said, if you're upset, I understand that. I said, and if you want to put in a complaint to your command, I said, feel free to do it. I said, I'm not stopping you. That prisoner looked at me and said, no, ma'am, you always take care of us, and you come and talk to us all the time. He said, but I was good with cereal because I don't eat really heavy in the morning anyway. But I told him, I said, okay, I appreciate that. I said, but I just wanted you to know that if you decided to file a complaint, it was no issue on me, or to me. So it's just important to have that type of rapport. And that same prisoner volunteered for the, we call it the outreach program. That's when prisoners stand up. We'll have units come in, and we'll give them a tour of the facility, and then close it out with the prisoner talking to them, being honest about, this is what I did, this is how it affects me and my family, this is how life is in the Brig, da-da-da-da-da-da. You get up early, hygiene, breakfast, work, you come in for lunch, you go back to work, that type of stuff. So when a prisoner chooses to participate in the outreach program, that's a big deal, because legally I cannot give that prisoner anything. I can't take time off the sentence. I can't give them extra visitation for that weekend or anything. So when they just choose to volunteer and do it, it means a lot to me. So the only thing I do is ask them for their appellate attorney's information, and then I would let the appellate attorney know, hey, look, can't give your client anything, but he volunteered once, 2 times, 3 times, whatever, to do the Brig outreach program. So he was telling Marines, don't follow in my footsteps. And that's a big deal. But I also put rules on the unit, though. You're not going to embarrass that prisoner. You're not going to ask super personal questions. And if they choose not to answer the question that you ask, respect that and just move on, right? So the prisoners know, and I explain that to the prisoners in advance. I said, hey, 1, I thank you for doing this. And 2, just understand that the people that are attending, the service members, I'm not going to allow them to embarrass you.
Yeah.
So
I think it's really important. I think a lot of times we lose sight of the fact that these are our people.
yeah,
Granted, they've strayed quite, in some cases very far, or just circumstances being what they are. But at the same time, there's no reason to allow them to be disrespected, disrespect themselves, disrespect each other, disrespect you, vice versa. I think that it's just treating people humanely and with dignity, regardless of the circumstance, I think is really important.
oh, certainly, and we're big on that. So whether the charge is UA, larceny, rape of a 3-year-old child, murder, we treat them with that dignity and respect. We had an Army Master Sergeant locked up when I was in Lejeune. His unit went to Panama to train, I think, for a year, and he was married, had a family, but he got involved with another female, and he murdered her over there.
That's one way to get involved.
Right. And so we had him. He got 30 years, and Lejeune, the facility, only allows confinement for up to 1 year, so he was transferred to Leavenworth. Then I got a call. Army Corrections Command in Arlington had asked me, can I house Bo Bergdahl? Remember him?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So he never got awarded confinement at his court-martial. So he never came to my facility, but we work all these things out in advance. And I told the Army, yep, I would take him, no issue. So they just try to coordinate in advance because, again, that was another high-profile one, and they want everything set and in place beforehand. So.
Yeah. Wow. It's so fascinating. Well, you guys got anything else?
Well, I was just, okay, so you've been at Lejeune, and what all brigs have you been involved in, served at?
All right, so I started here at Quantico in '96, and I was privileged enough to come back and be the CO, so I felt pretty good. So I did Quantico, did Lejeune, went to Okinawa after that, came back to Quantico, and then I was at the Staff Academy, but then got selected for Warrant Officer and Gunnery Sergeant. Then I went to the Warrant Officer Basic course. Then I went back to Okinawa. Then I came back to Quantico. Then I went to the Navy Brig in Charleston, South Carolina. Then I came back up here.
All right, so kind of like
Well, I'm sorry, I
Quantico
came
somewhere
to
else, Quantico somewhere else.
yeah,
Okay.
Quantico was the thing. So after
Yeah.
Charleston, after the Navy Brig, I went to Lejeune, and then from Lejeune I came up here to the headquarters. So finished out at the big shed.
Yeah. Put in some miles.
Yeah, yeah.
You got so you've had quite a few respectful prisoners and stuff. Anybody that you're kind of stands out as making huge strides in the right direction?
I remember in Okinawa, I was a staff sergeant and I was a counselor. So within the corrections field, you can have another job as a correctional counselor, right? And we assist them with paying bills, doing their program plan, and post release information, right? So a prisoner who was a sex offender that I worked with, so I gave him all the resources he needed, where he needed to go, for treatment, groups, and all of that stuff. That prisoner figured out how to call the Brig in Okinawa. And he called back and he said, I just wanted to call and tell you that I did everything in my program plan. I got set up because that program plan involves where they're going to live, how they're going to support themselves. So you have something like a letter from mom or dad or grandma. This prisoner will live with me upon release. And you have a letter of a tender of employment saying, I will employ this person. Da, da, da. So he, like I said, he figured out how to call overseas and he wanted me to know that he was doing everything his program plan called for and that he was glad I was hard on him because he's seen on the outside what I told him. I said, the things you guys want to do in here, you want to talk back, you want to do this, you want to do that. You can't do that when you're working because you're providing for family, So it's very different once you start working because employees aren't going to put up with that.
Right.
And then I've had prisoners just at different facilities, like the one I mentioned earlier, and just other ones that would say, thanks for making the rounds, or they'd volunteer to clean extra. Ma'am, you want me to clean your office, or you want anything done? Or I saw this outside and I told the guard, like something hanging off the building, whatever. So having that rapport is just so important to me. And again, it doesn't mean I'm friends with the prisoners. It just means we communicate directly. There are no misconceptions on what I'm going to put up with, because as a Brig CO, you have so much power, right? For one, you can change their release date. If they're not behaving themselves, not following rules, you can take away the good conduct time that they get based on the sentence length, right? Plus, I can forward charges to the command. Whether or not the command actually cements that and add it to the results and, add it to the charge sheet is different. But every time I've referred charges, they stuck, though. I always had video evidence and clear documentation, right? The other thing is we can control visits, phone calls, that type of thing. So when they're not being good, we can take away the personal visits and personal calls. But we never cut off attorney contact, of course. And then the other big thing is that we play a role in vacating a pretrial agreement. So if a prisoner has a pretrial agreement to just do 5 years instead of 15, and their behavior has just been negative, just not complying, just not adjusting to confinement well, we can reach out to the unit and say, hey, we know he has a PTA. Here is everything that's been going on with them. And if the unit chooses, they can vacate that PTA. So pretrial agreement is, all right.
Yeah.
This is what we took. So, and that's
here.
the thing. You have a lot of power, and we work and we live to get to that, but we don't ever let it get out of control.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I guess one more question as we're kind of getting close to the end here.
Yeah.
Do you have any big plans for your second career coming
Yeah,
up?
that's where I was wanting to go. What's next? What is next?
Well, lot of family time and friend time.
Nice.
Visits, world travels. I love traveling.
Any big targets?
Just the countries I've never been to before, So for us, like I told Vic, in the corrections field, people say, oh, you go in the military, you'll have fun, you'll travel, you'll go to cool places. We have 5 spots you'll ever go to, right?
Yeah, we just went through the list.
Yeah. And it's like, all right, okay, Yuma, all right, Okinawa, Iwakuni, Pendleton, Lejeune, and the headquarters. But anyways, just as many countries as I can that I haven't visited before. And I'm also going to volunteer. So I'm not going to rush and go back to work because it's hit me for 26 years. This is what my pace was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
And you had 3 Brig CO tours. It's so, so with the stress that comes with that. So for me, it's like I'm going to take several months or maybe a year off, but I'll also volunteer back at Walter Reed. They mean a
Okay.
lot to me,
Yeah.
so I'm going to volunteer up
Okay,
there.
that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's sort of a life hack, is to take that time, and yeah, sort of recharge your battery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be in a rush to get back into the grind.
See
'cause-
some beaches, see some mountains.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Just see some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love getting out, so I look
Yeah.
forward to that.
yeah.
It's exciting.
That's awesome.
I guess the last question for me is, what can people such as ourselves or like our listeners do? Is there any like outreach programs that civilians do to help people in the brig, or like any like way to donate resources or stuff to them, or?
Well, I mean, people, they'll reach out to the Brig to volunteer. So whether it's on the religious side, for example, we had prisoners that they said, hey, I study Buddhism, or I want somebody to come in. So, working closely with the chaplain's office, for example, is great because they get the volunteers from out in town to come in and do things like that. But honestly, the prisoners unit is still responsible for them. They have family and friends, but it's certain things if people reach out to the Brig commanding officer and say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do, I'm willing to help with whatever, then that's the CO's call then. But typically, even post-trial prisoners, right? So once they go to court and their trial is over, they're covered for 2 weeks on pay and stuff like that. But even after their pay stops, they get free health and comfort items. They get like 5 envelopes with stamps on it to write to family. So, and that's all in the budget, So again, they do have a lot at their disposal, but any help somebody wants to offer, they'll go through the CO.
Okay.
See if it's needed.
All right, I think Vic's got the ceremonial last question if he's ready for it.
Well, actually, this is sort of I hate to nerd out a little bit here before we get into the final. But so one of my favorite movies of all time is Dirty Dozen.
There we
course.
go.
And they pull, these ruffians out of the brig to do this special mission to, assassinate a bunch of Nazi leadership. Anyways, is that even in the realm of the possible to do something as wild as that? I guess in a more realistic term, is there any special cases where, because they are still uniformed members of like you said, still subject to UCMJ, still subject to the orders of the commanding officer, blah, blah, blah. Would there ever be a time where you would get an exception where someone would be pulled out of the brig to do anything other than what you guys have already assigned them at the...
On the prisoner side?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, no, the
So they're
thing is,
just
you gotta
on the
be-
rolls as far as manpower is concerned. They're not worldwide deployable or anything like that, right?
No, they're there we got to make sure they get to court in one piece, and that's what we do. So, yeah, they'll leave the facility, but it'll be to work, So
Yeah.
here in Quantico, I remember as a young Marine, we will walk them from the brig to the back gate, picking up trash. And sometimes the unit will call. They'll say, hey, we got to move our office spaces to another building. They'll put in a request to have prisoners work. So, of course, we'll make sure that the unit provides the proper PPE. We'll give them the bodies, make sure they know, bring them back for chow, give them water, give them breaks, that type of thing. So you can use them for things like that. And, again, when they volunteer for the prison outreach program, but typically we don't take them
They're
out.
not going on special
and-
missions.
No.
Vic, I think to answer your question from a historical perspective, shit needs to be hitting the fan very, very hard for that to even be considered.
It was the most
Like,
ridiculous question, but I had to
No,
ask
don't
it.
say
to be fair, I think I saw an article in Ukraine where they're offering, I don't think, not necessarily military prisoners, but prisoners, if you want to serve your sentence on the front lines against, the Russian
Yeah,
invasion, that's
yeah,
an
yeah.
option. But like I said,
So
I
there's
mean,
some serious fan hitting that needs to
yeah,
occur
things
there.
need to be going
Historically.
very poorly for your military force for that to be even a consideration.
No, trust
Fair
me.
enough,
They
fair
would love
enough.
to get out and go back and do things, but
Yeah,
no, we
yeah.
don't allow that stuff.
Yet.
So yeah, I guess my final question for you then: what is your favorite memory in the Marine Corps?
Man, that's tough. I've had so many, right?
Right, it is hard. That's why I like putting you guys on the spot because I know I can't answer this question really very well either.
Right. So I just think in general, just the rapport that I've had with members of all services, right? So for me, it always kept me grounded. It was so humbling because when I got somebody in a different service asking me to promote them, to retire them, to re-enlist them, that is so, for me, it's just so heartwarming, right? So, I used to say, everybody don't have to be like me, but I just always see the fruits of that. And then, even with my brother, so my brother was a gunnery sergeant. I got to retire him in 2018.
Oh, that's awesome.
So serving with, thank you. So serving with him and my cousin, it was just so cool. So my husband, brother, cousin, and I, at points, we all served together, right? And you got about 70-some years of service, but I think just the camaraderie, the rapport that I've built, because in one sense, I'll say, well, I accomplished some things in the Marine Corps that's unique, and this, and this, and that's good. But the interaction, the rapport that I've built with people, so it's so important, so heartwarming. And when I'm able to say 26 years later, I'm still in touch with those same people, or somebody I met 20 years ago, like the Okinawans in the Brig, we still talk. When they come to the States, they'll visit. When I go over for work, I'll visit with them. I always make time in the schedule. So just that, I think. And then the close run-up would be the things I was lucky enough to achieve, that those milestones that were brand new to the Marine Corps Corrections field.
Your trailblazing
Your
ways.
trailblazer,
Yeah.
I was about to say. It's so great.
Thank you.
Well, this has been... Oh,
I want to mention you're actually a trailblazer on the podcast, too, because you're first female Marine, I believe.
Yeah.
on the
Oh.
podcast.
Yeah.
Can't
Oh,
say first
wow.
female. Nancy's been on.
Nancy,
But first
yeah.
female Marine for sure.
Oh,
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Hopefully, and same, hopefully many more to come.
Yeah.
But this has been
Yeah.
so great, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come in. Again, congratulations on your retirement. Thank you for such a wonderful career and all the service and everything that you've done for the Corps and for the country. This has just been such a treat, so thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you guys for
This has
having
been-
me. You don't know how much this meant, and thank you for your service as well. It's just heartwarming for me, so I appreciate the opportunity to come hang out and laugh with you today.
Yeah,
This has been
Well,
awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, safe travels too, and please send
Yeah.
us postcards.
Yeah.
I'll
If you
be
can
nice.
find any, yeah.
Yeah, do they just do
I
Is that a
will.
thing? Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I'll wrap it up for us today. Disclaimer: none of our what's what we said, our opinions or our own
Yes.
our own fact. Nothing we say reflects the Marine Corps Association's stance on anything. So that sounds like a good disclaimer to me.
That works for me. Yeah.
All right. Thanks everyone for your time, and we'll catch you later.
Bye.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.